Okay, so the first two videos I did were inside with my little one and reading for kids. This is my backyard, surrounded by citrus trees, and over there are the chickens. Maybe next time we'll talk about chickens. If you guys have questions or you want to talk about anything in particular, let me know. This is my version of inviting you home because, like you, I'm quarantined. I have been mostly home since January because of my lupus and previously collapsed lung, which was oodles of fun and I'd like to never repeat again. So today I posted part of a serial called Outlaw Annie, which is a sort of Weird West, near future, new frontier, gunslinging, grifters, etc. It's going to be on my website and on Patreon. There are no paywalls, it's just something to do. And I was going to read to you. I actually started recording this earlier, but when I started reading, I grew up in the mountains with a hillbilly twang, came out a little bit, so I'm gonna try again. I may stop midway through. This is an unread, unfinished, agent hasn't read it, thriller, a rural psychological thriller about a girl in the kind of place I grew up, who has a problem with not killing people, as sometimes happens when you're a woman in the mountains. So, forgive my twang if it shows up more than any of us would like. I will do my best to keep it in check. My children joke that once I talk to anyone from home, you can tell. And I think the same thing is happening when I started reading this. So this is called Country Death Song, a Murder Ballad, and I apologize for the lack of G's if I fall prey to the way I sounded before, what do you call them, elocution lessons. If you see me in person, and even if you watch me in the videos, you'll see that I have a tendency to over-exaggerate words to try and keep that in check. But there's something that happens sometimes when you're reading, and I don't know, G's go away. So anyhow, Country Death Song. Chapter 1, Tina, 1982. I was a widow by the time I was 18. Most folks think Gus up and left me. They still give me side-eye, the kind that says they're trying to decide if they ought to pity me or just keep on judging me. I don't mind either way. Everyone's got a burden to bear, and I'd rather face their judgment than the peril of living with my Gus. People around here don't know that Gus died, but God knows. No lightning's come down to tell me to repent in the 2 years since my husband died. I figure that's about as good as any absolution I'll find in church. Better, really. Sometimes I think we're both happier this way. Gus wasn't good for a whole lot of anything. He got me in the family way, and my mama made sure we were married before I was showing too much of a bump. My sudden marriage to a man old enough to be my daddy didn't fool anyone, but she could still hold her head up on Sundays, so that was enough for her. Truth be told, I'm amazed he managed to get me that way. Gus talked like he was more man than any woman could handle, but he was working with a stub. His thing was more like a sweet gherkin that you get in those little jars at the market than a good dill pickle like they give you at lunchtime plate over at Catfish Downer. Now, I don't mind his gherkin, or the way he talked like everyone wanted it, but I did mind the way he looked at Cheyenne Morris. I also minded how hard he hit me when I pointed out that a married man like him ought to be glad anyone saw fit to fix his dinners and wash his trousers, instead of chasing after a girl even younger than me. He ignored me, right up to the moment I said I'd be embarrassed if other women were to end up like me, pregnant and bored. I can't say I was unaware of his temper, but I made the mistake of thinking he wouldn't hit me on account of the baby, and he made the mistake of thinking I was the forgiving sort. That would be my Rottweiler in the background. Apologize for her, too. Where was I? The next day I was bleeding like all the periods I'd missed the last few months had come out at once, and afterwards, when he was driving me back from the hospital where the doctors had scraped my innards out, I lost my temper. So like I said, I'm a widow now, but explaining how I came to be a widow would get complicated, so I just let folks think Gus left me. It's easier than the truth. Maybe they think I ought to feel guilt. Maybe they'd think I ought to be punished. But the good book says an eye for an eye. And I figure I was following God's laws, even if it wasn't precisely the set of laws Sheriff Miller enforced. Tina. Mama's voice comes through the house, and I realize she must have stopped by with a covered dish. She's in my house. I hear the clatter of a dish being set on my counter. And here, I could go to her, avoid what's coming, but I don't think of it. I'm still standing here, staring at what I've done now. I wasn't sure what happened this time, but I guess killing a man gets easier with practice. Tina. Mama repeats my name, but different this time. She's in the room now, and she says my name once more. Tina? It's a gift of hers to tuck a dozen things into just a couple letters. What she means is, dear Lord, what have you done? And someday you're going to make my old heart just stop. And probably most of all, why is there a dead man at the bottom of your stairs, child? She doesn't say any of that, because she knows as well as I do that the Bible says there's a time for talking and a time for doing. A dead body on the new linoleum is more of a doing than a talking time. Mama stares at me a minute or so longer, and I finally tear my eyes away from the eyes that are staring up at me. They'll only close if I close them now. Then Mama does what any good mother would. She sets about helping me figure things out. No woman worth her salt lasts long in the mountains if she can't handle a crisis. And Mama's raised me and my brothers, and now she's got a few of my nieces who've been staying with her so long that they've started calling her Mama too. She makes do. And we all learned young that when Mama speaks in that calm voice, even God ought to mind her. She gets like that now, as she says, "Do you have the tarp your cousin lent you for when you were painting the bathroom walls?" I nod. I might not be new to killing men, but it still felt like a shock. If you asked me this morning, I'd have said I didn't think I'd ever kill another man, although I might not have said it just like that because I don't go around announcing that I've done it before. The point stands, though. I'm not a murderer. I mean, technically, I suppose I am, but not in my heart, and that's what counts, right? I have no sin in my heart, no hate, no ill will. I stare at the dead man. He had a darkness in his heart. I saw it, and I was sure God had too. Don't touch him, Mama orders. I don't tell her I'm not in the habit of touching strangers or dead men. I just nod. Where's the tarp? Shed? Mama steps around me and waddles toward the shed. I was grateful she was the one going. She'd never liked dealing with spiders or other creeper crawlers, so I'm surprised. The alternative, I guess, is her staying there with the dead man, or watching me stare at him. Which is where I'm still standing when Mama comes back and shakes out the tarp. Make sure the door's locked. I do as I'm told. It seems silly to lock it now. The man had already come into my house with his questions and his clicking ink pen and staring at me. Call Cousin Michael. Mama walks into the kitchen, gets us both rubber gloves, and I trail behind her. She's smart, and I'm feeling better about things with her at my side. Cousin Michael has a pickup truck and a good job. He works a machine in the strip mines. I couldn't tell you what he did, but he's good to his family, and he doesn't ask questions. A lot of people feel uncomfortable with him on account of his years in the army and his being darker skinned than anyone from here. But he's a good man. Family matters, and that's the best sort of man. Michael will know what to do, Mama says, as if I don't. It's not that I disagree with her, but sometimes I wish she'd stop pretending that men know things better than us. My actual blood family, my cousin, has married him after he'd been here in Trout Junction with a local boy who'd been in the army. So Michael might not be from here, but he's ours now. And family looks after family. Michael will help. In that moment, I know two things. My mother isn't going to call the sheriff, and she isn't going to call the priest. Somehow I feel better about that second one. At least if she called the sheriff, I'd go into one of those ladies' prisons. On TV, they always look so clean, and they have a library, and someone else does all the cooking. Unless I wanted to get married again, which I don't. A few years in prison doesn't sound bad. No cooking, no cleaning, no men. It wasn't any worse than the way things were now. I mean, sure, I couldn't go down to the beach or anything, but unless I found a man to take me, I couldn't go there anyhow. Travel takes money, and money means men. So I call Cousin Michael and tell him I need help moving stuff. And he says, "You okay?" You must hear something in my voice. He's clever like that, Cousin Michael. I am. I just need help. Around back. Mama and I wrap the dead man in a nice blue tarp, and she ties some fancy knots with binder twine I hadn't even known I had. It's pretty impressive that she can do it with those yellow gloves. By the time Michael texts and says he's on his way, the dead man looks like a colorful blue log. He smells, though. Dead smell always lingers, I say. And I realize my mistake when Mama gives me a look like I admitted something. I hadn't, mind you. I didn't even bring Gus into the house after I killed him. So I don't flinch away from her stare. I say, "The stray dog, it got in the rat poison." But Mama's still staring at me, and what sort of person would I be? I'd just kill a dog for being hungry. I'd fed it. I'd even started trying out names. I was pregnant back then, so I thought a lot about names. The name of a thing shapes it. Some people grow into theirs. Some people grow out of theirs. Like shoes that used to fit, and then they don't after a while. I go by Tina now, not my nickname from before I was married. People still slip, but I'm more than that name. I think a name should show what we are on the outside. All right. So, I think I kept most of my G's. Some of them, right? Lie to me if I didn't. I will happily read you more. That, something else. Answer questions. Tell me what you want. I'll introduce you to my chickens. I did post a video on Instagram of chicken feeding time. I suppose we all do things to keep sane when we're trapped at home. So stay safe, stay home, wash your hands, etc.